Okay, hello everyone. This is the CircuitPython Weekly for November 14th, 2017. This is where those of us who are paid to work on CircuitPython meet up together and also with the community at large and talk about the status and what's going on with everything. The format of this is we'll start with a quick state of CircuitPython and then go into hug reports, which is a chance for everybody to recognize other people for awesome things they've done in the community. And then after that, we'll go into our status updates and just kind of where we're at, what we're working on. And then that gives people a chance to mention anything that they want to talk about kind of in a longer form, which is kind of the free-for-all at the end. The hope is that we organize this in a way that the most important information comes at the top and the more detailed, longer form discussion happens at the end. So we're doing this on a Tuesday. It's normally on Mondays. To join, you can join on the Adafruit Discord, which is adafru.it/Discord. We'll get you into the Discord channel. We hang out in the CircuitPython voice chat along with the text chat for CircuitPython at the same time. It happens normally on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Anybody is welcome to join. So yeah, that's how you get. That's how you participate. Now for State of CircuitPython, these again are just pulled from the GitHub Insights page. In the last week, I pulled these this morning, by the way, because I was jet lagged last night. This morning we had, in the last week, we had 11 pull requests merged with 5 committers, which is awesome. 9 closed issues by 3 people, 8 opened by 6 different people, which is really cool. I like seeing how many different people are working on it, which is great. 2.1 was released 4 weeks ago. I won't go into details on the individual boards, but the trend is very similar where Circuit Playground Express and Trinket M0 are kind of the top 2. And we've had 257 downloads over since last week for a total of 918. 2.1, I believe, is also shipping on the Trinket M0 and the Gemma M0. So a bunch more people are getting it besides those who download it. Okay, so that's state of CircuitPython. Now I want to go over hug reports. The format of this is I'll start off so that people can see examples, and then I just call on people in the order that I see in the CircuitPython voice chat, which happens to be alphabetical. If you don't have a mic, feel free to just type in the chat, and I will read it off. So I wanted to first start off with props to Kevin J. Walters on GitHub for the .star bug report about math and Kattni for the quick fix for that. That was awesome. Shout out to Deshipu Radomir for maintaining the MicroPython RGB libraries. There's been some pull requests, and he's been super helpful getting those pulled in. Cascade and Mike00 for the feature requests on GitHub with issues. Those have been great. One was gamepad support for USB HID, and the other was I2C slave. Somebody actually just followed up on that Anton did with an idea for I2C slave that I actually really like. So that's super cool. Shout out to F. Morton. I believe it's their first pull request for updating some examples. So that's been awesome as well. 2 more. Microbuilder, aka K-Town, is a longtime Adafruit engineer and has been doing some really cool work with the NR52 so far. So that's going really well. I'm actually going to sync with him later today. And then lastly, shout out to everybody on Discord and the forums who was super helpful while I was away from my computer. I was snooping a little bit on my phone, but I only had my phone, so I couldn't really jump in, and it was great to see everybody be super helpful. So those are my hug reports. Tony, do you have any?
Oh, hey, sorry, is my mic working?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry. Oh no, no updates here.
Okay. And I think Carter just restarted because he must not have been able to hear you. So I'll wait just a smidge until Carter comes back. Okay. Carter, Tony didn't have any hug reports. Bravo Delta, do you have anything?
No, I'm new here. Like I said, I put that game on there. I'm new to Python and CircuitPython. I got experience in DC++ and everything that's got that kind of syntax.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Thanks for jumping in. Okay, Carter, any hug reports? Dan H for helping with the toolchain setup so I can build CircuitPython, and sanity check the DS18B20 temp sensor. Yeah, that's the Dallas One wire. That would be good. Perfect. Okay, Dan.
Hi. So you were very comprehensive, Scott. But I'll just add that Mike McWethy went through like zillions of libraries and updated a certain API, which was a lot of work. And that's great. So now we're going to follow up and build that stuff into the bundle.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
otherwise, what I have to say is redundant to what you said.
You can still give people props.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I think Jerry again tested some stuff, and Jerry and Kattni tested a bunch of things when I was undoing and redoing and undoing some of the USB and MSC stuff last week when I was trying to get a stable master tip back. So that was very helpful.
Yeah,
And
totally.
yeah, otherwise, no, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Jerry, you want to type in your hug report? Hug reports to Dan and Kattni for the effort on the Circuit Playground microphone. Yeah. And also to MicroBuilder for the updates to the NRF52 for the Feather 52 support, which is going to be epic. We're definitely, for those of you who don't know, we're kind of targeting Bluetooth support for 4X. But K-Town, aka MicroBuilder, was ready to start picking it up. So I'm kind of hoping that 3X is going to be a long dev cycle, but 4X will be pretty quick. So yeah. Kattni.
Yeah, I wanted to give a hug report to Dan, Jerry, Histo, Bravo Delta, and Lady Ada for responding on the forums regarding the microphone issue with the Circuit Playground Express. There was another person who was having an issue where they couldn't get any of the code to work at all, and Dan and Lady Ada managed to figure out that that was a microphone frequency or some frequency issue, and that got sorted out for that person, so they were able to continue with their project. So that was, and everybody else helped test my code, so I was able to figure out that it's definitely something specific to one of my boards, and that was super helpful, because this is something that we want to put into the API. And if it was very inconsistent and didn't work on a bunch of boards, that would have been a problem. So it was amazing to have another 7 boards with 6 different people get my code tested. That was really, really helpful. So thank you very much.
Right. That's awesome. Sorry, I was slacking on my note taking again. I'm trying to be better about this because then we can use these notes for release notes. Later, because we like to shout out to everybody in our release notes. MicroWattBot, do you have anything?
Yes, here is the lurker.
Hello.
I want to commend John Park's workshop.
Okay.
For being able to encourage and see somebody solder and let other people know, yes, you can do that.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, and I'm diligently studying my books.
Okay.
For Python, and I'm getting a little traction, but it's going to take a little bit of time. You know, get up to speed.
Sweet. Can you send me an email? I want to hook you up with some hardware.
Okay. Where do I send it?
Scott@adafruit.com. And then I'll follow up with you there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, Mr. McWethy.
Nothing to add.
Okay. And that's the Hug Report section of this. Okay, so after Hug Reports, we do status updates. For those of you who don't know, I was out the last 5 days in North Carolina for a medieval-themed wedding. It was really awesome. There was a horse in the wedding ceremony, which is not something you typically see. Or at least I've never seen that in a wedding ceremony. So that was really good. I didn't bring my computer, so I was definitely like off the grid. I'm feeling really ready to jump into something. So I'm a little I'm open to suggestions about what that could be, whether it's more USB work or analog I/O or pulse I/O, something like that. I saw that the stuff the USB reliability stuff I was doing last week got pulled in. I think it has the NVM cache changes into it, and I'm curious to disable those and see if that actually has an impact, because I have a feeling that the cache settings impact how fast everything runs. So the cat's upset that I'm talking. She just tipped the garbage can over. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is I'm around. I have no travel plans going forwards. Next week, for those of us in the U.S., we do have Thanksgiving holiday, but I should be able to get rolling on some stuff. So later on, kind of after we do status updates, let's figure out where my time would be best spent. I'm just going to take one quick break to kick the cat out because she's digging through the garbage. Go away. All right. And then the other thing, Andon, who you guys have seen on Discord and GitHub, sent me an email because they're busy. So I'll just read off their status update. It says, I didn't get much in the way of actual work done, mostly because my job has been super busy. That said, I've done a bit of thinking on the subject of examples. So the background is that Andon was working on an issue about updating the examples that are in the actual CircuitPython repo. They say, my original idea was hardware examples, stuff to show off what the Circuit Playground or CircuitPython boards can do, but after a bit of looking, almost every such example already exists, and it seems silly to reinvent the wheel. So I've decided to take a different approach when it comes to the examples in the CircuitPython repository. I want to focus on examples that highlight what CircuitPython can do and also how it is different from Arduino. As an example, the way C variant languages, such as what is used in Arduino IDE, are very strict on variables. Python simply doesn't care. CircuitPython and especially the Express boards have built-in file systems that are easily accessible from the PC as well. Those are the things I will be focusing on with first with examples, and I hopefully get to begin working on them this weekend. So that is Andon's update. Tony, go ahead and do your update, and I'll post a link to the examples issue while you do that.
Hey, yeah. Let's see. So last week did a bunch of guide updates for a lot of the pressure sensors, the BME 280, BMP 280, the BME 680, although there's a bug that we just fixed with that one.
Okay.
So I'm still working on that. And then there was the SI 7210, I think was the number. Lots of sensors, MCP 9808. So about a half dozen or so sensors that have just updated the guides to show the usage. Did a GPS library, and those were the big ones last week. And then also some little tweaks to the porting a library to CircuitPython guide, just to clarify like some of the const usage.
Okay.
We've done that last week. Let's see. So this week, then there are a few more sensor updates that I'm working on. There's an update to the GPS to add a data logging example, and then some clarifications to the Vagrant guide of. So like we have the old SAMD21 MicroPython guide.
Right.
Basically, we're going to turn that into here's how to build CircuitPython using like a Vagrant VM to run it on any operating system. So if someone wants to use like MPY Cross or a tool like that, it'll kind of show how to use some of that.
Right, right. That'll be cool. You're on a roll. Keep it up. Okay, Bravo Delta, do you have anything you want to talk about? Anything you're working on?
Just still trying to learn about the CircuitPython, what I can do and what I can't do.
Yeah.
Waiting on a metro to come in the mail that seems to get stuck between here and Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope it comes quickly.
No, I'm having fun. I got the Circuit Playground Express. Having a lot of fun with that.
Awesome. That's a great board to start with. And Katney's done a lot of work with it if you have questions. Okay, Carter. ADS, ADC Lab is done and in a bundle. Perfect. Starting to look at refactoring for the one-wire device, which is also awesome. Also have a color sensor on TCS 34725 RGB color sensor on the way, and we'll probably do driver for that next. That sounds cool. Dan?
So I've been spending most of my time on SPI in Bus.io, and it's coded up, and I'm debugging it right now. And I do have a slightly simpler way of setting the defaults that we were talking about. I can talk to you about that later, about how to deal with the ASF4 config files.
Right.
And I also made a couple of flash erasers so that we don't keep telling people to start up Arduino and load Blinky in order to clear out Flash.
Right.
And one of them works, but the other one doesn't work because the M4 bootloader actually assumes only 256K of Flash. So there's an issue you probably saw about that. So as soon as that gets fixed up, as we fix the bootloader and everything, then we can publish those and start using them to help support people. So I hope to finish. So I've just implemented synchronous SPI, and when that's working, then I'll try to get the DMA SPI to work.
Okay.
And then could do more Bus.io stuff, or could try to get the external, the SPI flash to work. And we can talk about whether you or I should work on that.
Okay, I'll add that to my list of discussion later.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Dan?
No, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, Deshipu, do you have any hug reports or status update? Type. Jerry, if you have any status update, you could type it on too. On vacation for 2 weeks. Well, have a great vacation, Deshipu. And I did give you a shout out earlier for your help with the MicroPython RGB display library. So thank you for that as well. Jerry says testing I2C, no issues. I assume that's on 3X. Playing with the NRF52, confusing but fun. Yeah, it's quite early. And yes, I was right about 3X. Okay, Katney?
Yeah, so we talked last week about what sound sensor code to include in the API and decided on the sound meter code. So I have the function slimmed down significantly from before, so that's super helpful. And thanks to all the testing, I know that we need to change the default frequency and that we need to expose it, because there needs to be a default, but it also needs to be changeable because some of the boards require a higher frequency to work. So that was something I don't think would have occurred to me until we had all of this testing available. But that's what I have been working on, was getting getting that figured out and getting that to where it's ready to start heading into the API.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That sounds good. You had some more discussion for that later, right?
Yeah. I covered a lot of it. A lot of it was the testing thing that was super helpful, because I mean, I have only once previously had one other person test code that I've been doing for this.
Mm-hmm.
So having just such a huge number of people doing it, and finding out that there were issues that needed to be addressed was so helpful.
Right.
So that was like the biggest thing that really happened over the weekend, was all the troubleshooting that happened, and being able to figure out how we need to approach it to make sure that it works, because it's definitely something I would like to include, but for a bit there it was looking like it wasn't going to be an option, because if it's inconsistent we can't really have it in the API.
Right.
So that was unbelievably helpful. Very cool.
Yeah. Now you understand how useful like you, Jerry, and everybody else is. Just like, here, take this.
Right.
Tell me if it works.
I totally get it.
Awesome. All right. MicroWattBot, how is your ESP8266 stuff going?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, I got it, reconfigured successfully and submitted some notes to update the Learn Guide.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't gone back to check to see if they did anything with that yet, but
Mm-hmm.
it's going pretty good. Been given a lot of thought to, but the libraries, the CircuitPython MicroPython code is in C. Is that right?
Yeah, the core is in C.
But if I get to the point of tweaking something, that'll be kind of natural for me to read that and see what I might tweak to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the interface, the user interface, Python.
Right.
And you just said that the typing of variables is really loose in Python.
Right.
Does that pose a hurdle for people that have started out with Python and then migrate to libraries that are really strict, like you said?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's one of the trade-offs that you make with Python, is that it is very lenient in certain ways, because the way its typing system works is it just says like, oh, you wanted to do this method on this thing, like if I can do that, I'll do it, and I won't check other things. So it's definitely weird to take somebody who learns on Python and then teach them C or Java or something like that that's more strongly typed. But it's a trade-off, because without worrying about types, you can work faster.
Sure, you get up to speed and
Yep.
Do more in a shorter amount of time. Yeah.
Right, but I think that's also the reason that you tend to see Python as like the scripting language and the small project language, where you won't see it as like we have a 1,000,000-line code base like at Google or somewhere else. Although they are hoping to change that. There are some proposals in Python to actually do static type analysis, but it's still very early.
In the current version of 3, they added type hints, so you can actually say that a variable, like for a function, expects to get an integer. And they did it because like Guido, he works at Dropbox, and they probably have the largest Python code base for client and server side anywhere. And I think they've kind of realized that at that scale, dynamic programming is great, but when you have hundreds of developers writing code that they might not be intimately familiar with, you get a lot of errors and issues that are super common and you don't get with typed languages. So they're adding it for the static analysis primarily, I think was what Guido said, but you also get a bit of a speed boost because the interpreter can optimize certain things with it. And it wouldn't surprise me to see long-term Damien add that stuff, because that makes a lot of sense with embedded. There are times when you have to jump down to like I need explicit 16-bit unsigned integer overflow behavior. And right now in Python, it's a big pain. You have to basically do Boolean bit operations to simulate that type of overflow and stuff. And it's like, I just wish I could say that this variable was a 16-bit int and it would, be that way internally. So, but as far as like, is it better or worse? That's just been like the $1 million question in programming and computer science for a long time. Like, dynamic languages are, gosh, I don't know, I guess go back to the 60s at least, like with Lisp and all that stuff. So, I don't think it's hard to say one is better or worse than the other. They have pros and cons. So it's good if a language can do both, like Python, though.
Right.
Well, about, 4 or 5 years after I started learning about programming years ago, I was amazed to find out that there was this idea that you could, in your variable name, you could fully disclose, either with prefixes or suffixes, what the nature of the variable is.
Right.
For Hungarian notation, oh boy, that brings back some old memories of MFC and Win32 API programming. But yeah, I like that style personally, to be super descriptive, like especially if you're dealing with a library and sensors and a property that's like a unit, like time or length. I always like to put the units on there as a suffix. So it's like, this is time in seconds, or, altitude in meters, something like that. So the more descriptive, the better.
Well, how would you feel about a Learn guide where you shared some of that with these beginners? Historically, at one point, this is what we used to do.
Yeah, well, it's hard. It's like kind of, what's all right, like, because it's easy to just like write like a free form blog post, like here's some tips and things, but like what's a practical application,
right?
For that. But it's a cool point.
No reason it can't be a blog post.
Yeah, sure.
Do that too.
Okay, well, that's all I've got.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and please do send me an email.
Got it.
And then lastly, Mike, do you have status update?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I went ahead and, as requested, to make the using bus.io and as well as a bus device, an I2C bus device. The method to read has been changed from read underbar into to read into, and I did that to a dozen libraries, and also the bus device library. So this is a reminder, or maybe information to anybody who adds any code to the libraries or adds a new library, that we would like to keep to that standard. So I did notice already the ADS 1x15 library was added, and sure enough, the call was in there to an I2C device using read underbar into. So this is just to let everybody here in the group know, and to pass the word on that, and we want to switch over to using read with no underbar, read into.
Right.
Okay.
All one word.
All one word.
Yeah.
And it's consistent with SPI. That's the whole reason why we did it.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth actually just removing it? Like if we remove the underscore version?
I would be happy to. We just left it in there, for compatibility, I guess, for one future version. So, go ahead.
I think that this is the best time to remove it, while there are not really any third-party drivers out there that we would break. While we still control all the code that uses it, that's the best time to actually make such changes.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
But I'd also just be careful to say, like, going forward in the future, you probably want a nice policy to tell people, like, hey, if you're going to go write your own third-party driver, we'll give you some kind of guarantee that we're not going to break the APIs without, like, maybe one release kind of heads up or something. Here's the process for how we deprecate things.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree too. Like, there's really not much third-party stuff out there, so take the pain now and make the switch while it's easy.
Yeah, totally true. And then I think also in that vein of if anybody knows about third-party drivers we have a community bundle that can get it on our radar, and so we should make sure that when we see third-party drivers that are supporting devices that are not Adafruit devices, let's make sure and get them in the community bundle as well. Does that sound good?
Because I mean, that's ultimately like up to the person who creates it to decide, right? Like, you know, like I mean, I imagine there's always going to be code out there that might not necessarily be in a bundle, right?
Right. Yeah, I think the community bundle is just a great way for us to keep track of it, because like I wouldn't mind submitting fixes for them as well, but I got to know about it and able to do that.
Do we sign up to do a lot of maintenance for like let's say we see someone's third-party code, and then like, you know, maybe it's not being updated or anything, and if we put it in the bundle, do we suddenly kind of take over ownership of that? Or
well, that's why I have two. That's why I was thinking we would have two bundles.
Community bundle would just be like, here's the grab bag, I guess, of
right.
You know, may or may not work.
Right. We make no promises that it is supported, but ideally if we had some sort of testing we could do, we could actually say like we won't intentionally break it. Like, so if we do API changes, we'll change them.
These are third-party libraries that we know about. I mean, maybe it doesn't even have to be a bundle. You know, maybe it's just a curated like README or list or something, or you know.
Yeah, it could be that too. I think the bundle's just nice in terms of just download it all and you get it all. But that's the idea. That was my idea with it, is that it is also just it functions as a list as well. All right. So that is status updates. We're cruising. Let's just again, lastly circle back and talk about some of the discussion. So
I actually have something I wanted to bring up that we haven't touched on yet. So I noticed that GitHub now has a new global label. It's good first issue. I think it's basically their version of our beginner friendly. And my question for you is, do we want to integrate it? Because if GitHub is now pushing to do basically what we've been doing with beginner friendly, do we want to possibly bring in, you know, brand new people from everywhere, whether that's something we want to consider doing? And I don't know that we would want to get rid of beginner friendly, but if we're duplicating it, that might be odd. So, but I noticed it while I was dealing with pull requests. It was basically like a banner thing on the top that talked about that one, and one other one that I didn't think was relevant to us, but I thought I would point that out in case you were unaware.
Yeah, I saw the banner too. It's not clear to me what they're doing with that tag yet. Do you know?
Okay, I assumed it was basically what we were doing, but I guess that's probably because I'm coming from, you know, the context of us and not just a general question. So I guess if nothing else, then it's probably something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was aware of it. I just didn't know like if that gets, you know, if those issues get aggregated anywhere or not.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if it was just something that you could search and find, it's one thing, but if they're aggregating them all somewhere, that might be a different story.
Yeah, I mean, that would be better for us. Like,
gotcha.
I just know that like the other term was like beginner friendly or something, and I wanted to avoid like notions of beginners and difficulty as well. Like some people say like easy, and it's like, no, I don't want to assert that it's going to be easy.
Good first issue kind of made sense.
Yeah.
However, what happens when it's your second one and you're still new? You know, so it was a little bit odd.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm open to switching it up.
Okay. I figure something to put on our radar so we know, you know, if we want to start being able to incorporate more community.
Right.
Then, you know, that's an available option.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm okay switching over to that if we want to do that.
Well, let me look into it more.
Okay.
To really figure out what they're doing with it, and I will get back to you when I have that information. and then we can make a slightly more informed decision.
Yeah. We can always have two labels on things as well. We don't have to
Okay.
remove one to add another.
Okay, that's good too then, because then we can stick with what we've had, but also be able to integrate more of the broader community.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. I think I like having those because it makes it pretty clear where to direct people. Kattni, do you want to talk more about the microphone stuff?
I think I kind of covered most of it. So I pulled a lot of the stuff from the original code from Tony's code, and ended up changing up a bit how the f-scale function is written up. It's smaller, which was the key, because in trying to put stuff in the API, it has to be as slim as possible. I just, after all the testing, we figured out that there are inconsistencies with the necessary frequency to have the mic work properly on different boards. Lady Ada pointed out that it needs to be at least 1 megahertz, and Dan figured out where in the code it's multiplying. So 16,000 is basically the minimum that puts it just barely above the necessary amount to have it work. So I figure we'll need to change the examples as well, I think, in the actual CircuitPython read the docs, so that that's updated. And then have frequency still be something you can, as an end user, that you can change, because if your board needs it to be 32 or whatever, and that's just something we can write into the explanation of it, so that can be altered.
I mean, I think 16. If a board doesn't function at 16, then there's something wrong with the sensor, because that's out of spec.
Okay, because there were some I thought that had to go higher than that. So are we thinking it's just an inconsistency in the sensor?
I think Jerry was seeing different levels of sensitivity based on the frequency.
Okay.
But I don't think we were seeing zeros. Like I could see where it worked and it didn't work. And it would work at 500. A lot of them would work around 500 kilohertz, but they're not guaranteed to do that.
So
but they're guaranteed. The other thing we can do is that we can change. Right now, the code that Scott wrote oversamples by a fixed amount, and that oversampling will set the multiplier. So we could just sort of change the oversampling rate so to guarantee that the chip is getting 1 megahertz minimum.
Well, 16,000 frequency guarantees that as well.
Right, but why, if you don't need to worry about that? Yeah, I mean, right now the default for PDM in is 8,000, so that's obviously not going to work with that microphone. But we might want to make that. We could, that I brought up. I filed an issue on that, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Or something.
So change that up in PDM in, and then we may not. Then we just already got the default what it is, and then we aren't writing a new default into every piece of code we do.
Right, but then the question is: are we going to fix it in 2.x? Or are we going to fix it only in 3.0 or something like that? So it might be good to. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, then maybe Scott has an opinion about where we're going to do this.
Well, no, it makes more sense to. I mean, I would rather have not had it exposed because to not have it changed. But when you're pointing out the fact that it has worked across the board with 16K, that's excellent. I can just set that to be what it is in the API code, at least for now, and until we make a decision about changing either PDM in or whatever, then at least the API will work with 2.1.
Right.
Which is what we need for now. So
I think, and to specify it explicitly is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the background.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to give background for everybody else. The microphone on the new Circuit Playground is what's called a PDM microphone, which is pulse density modulation. And the way that it works is basically you give it a clock signal, and on that clock signal, the microphone will either give you a 0 or a 1, which is basically a 1-bit sample of audio. And then you sample a bunch of that, and then you figure out a finer grained sort of value based on that oversampling. And the The thing that the PDMN didn't really enforce that it probably should have was the fact that the microphones on the Circuit Playground Express, and typically all of them in that form factor, require that clock signal to be at least 1 megahertz before the microphone actually even works. So that's the background of what we're talking about.
Right, but the user doesn't see that 1 megahertz because the user specifies a sampling frequency, which then gets multiplied.
Yeah.
Which
is
wasn't
visible to the API user.
Right.
Yeah.
And it'll be even less visible to any users of the Circuit Playground Express API, but that's fine. Like like I said, I have the only board that the code doesn't work on.
But we haven't figured that out.
Right. It could just be broken. I have a Circuit Playground Express that has bad neopixels. Mm-hmm. So sometimes hardware fails. So
right, and that's why it was amazing to have. I had another friend of mine who's got one. Check it, and you've got one, and Jerry has two, and Bravo Delta checked, and Histo checked. Just everybody was checking, including the person who started the troubleshooting in the first place. Once you change the frequency, it worked for him as well. So. Okay. That's what's funny is it's just like the only inconsistency now is the one that I have here.
Right. The other thing to try is to try it with Arduino. If you think it's a hardware failure, it's worth trying with Arduino just to see if it works there.
Well, that's what's weird because it'll do the recording and playback.
Yeah, that is weird.
Right?
That is weird.
What's confusing, but it's all zeros with your test stuff. So I don't have any idea. This one has got me perplexed. I don't know, because so I have the sound meter code and I have recording code, which is a modified version of it's just a stripped down version of the test code you had in that issue, Scott.
Yep.
And that works, but it also really only works if I tap the board while it's recording, like with the fingernail. So it's actually like really loud to it. Otherwise, it doesn't really play back anything.
Yeah. The other thing to try is something that Dean got me doing, and it's actually super helpful, which is get an app on your phone that just generates a tone, and then play that tone when you're trying to record, because that's pretty obvious in the numbers.
I getcha.
When you record it, and also when you play it back. It's a bit more consistent than trying to do taps or say words like I was trying to do when I originally started.
Yeah, the taps are actually pretty consistent, surprisingly. It definitely plays back, ticking noises. But no tone would be a lot easier. But with any kind of using any of Dan's test code where it prints out what the buffer was, and we changed a bunch of numbers, like different combinations of numbers in that, and it's all zeros.
Well, you're saying that the recording program on the bad one only records taps. If
That's
you just
correct.
say la or something like that, it doesn't. So I think that it's just broken.
Okay.
I would actually not spend a lot of time on it because I think it's probably actually just broken.
Right. Mechanically
and that's
broken.
and the thing is, like, I probably would have spent a lot more time on it if we didn't have all this other test stuff. So thank you so much, all of you, for helping me out. Because it was pointing, because I really wanted to include something like this in the API, and if it wasn't going to work on half the boards, which I have two, so one is half,
right.
then it wasn't. Obviously, we can't do that. But then just, a couple of random people even grabbed the code that I posted, like, it works here. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, and I took the printing program, I just took your recording program and took out most of it. So,
right, no, I did notice that.
Yeah, so it was like the way I called it was exactly the same. So I think it is just, there's a little membrane that is on top of the thing, I think, inside. And if that got broken somehow or damaged, then
it's the newer board. That's what's funny. It actually sat in a bag until I finished my project.
Right. I am surprised, but and the fact that when I tested it, this business of 8,000 working or not, it's like it's on the hairy edge. So that's
right.
That's why we were having all this weird trouble. And maybe when Scott, when you were trying it, like all the microphones you had worked at
right
half a megahertz just fine,
And I had one
So-
that did as well, so it's just possible that earlier, because there's obviously a different sensor on these two boards. So it's possible the earlier boards had a lower frequency need.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's easy enough. I mean, that's just a matter of updating one number in the code we've got, and then we'll. I mean, I don't know that I see a huge reason to. I mean, maybe I guess it would make sense to maybe update that issue that you have, because I notice a lot of people end up there when looking for
Yep.
that code. Maybe just we can just drop another comment in that issue about about the change in frequency, and then I don't really think that it is something that needs to be changed in 2x.
Right. Okay, well, I mean, you guys did a great job running this down. I think you're on the right track, and we should just wrap it up, and it's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured is, Yeah, so we'll post it there. We'll change it in the examples. So people that are getting the code from Read the Docs are getting the right numbers, and then we can worry about deciding if we want to actually alter PDM in for 3x and not worry about it for 2x. I would say would be the best way to go about it.
Sounds like a plan. Is there an issue for this?
No, we were. I mean, obviously, I assume things are me before I decide that they're not. So no, there's a forum post for it, but not an issue.
Okay.
So I can get an issue posted for it.
Yeah, that'd be good, just under 3x, so we don't forget.
Okay.
Everybody's typing. Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, and then the last thing I have on my list is the spy work that you've been doing, Dan.
Yeah. So I'm getting close. I hopefully that I'll have synchronous spy working in it within a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing, the question is, there are all these IO things to plow through, one wire and so forth. They're going to get easier and easier. But if you think that something else is like getting the SPI flash to work is a higher priority. So if I get this to work and then I get DMA to work and you have this shared DMA implementation, then the SPI flash should start to work.
Right.
Also, so it depends. There's one other bug which is sort of probably USB CDC kind of stuff, which is maybe the design of it, which is that you can't paste in more than 128 characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's has to do with the way we're reading from the buffers or something. So,
yeah, I think so too. I think we have a buffer that's 128 characters long.
Okay.
And I know I saw that we do have that. We do have an issue for it, and it's under 3x. So at some point I'll get to it. I don't think it's urgent enough. I was kind of feeling like, in terms of what I'm working on next, like, I kind of feel like the existing modules that people expect to be there, the ones that are already documented, are probably what we should just hammer on. So finish bus IO, get the SPI flash working, get analog IO, pulse IO, and basically like just run through all of that and just get it all working is kind of like probably the best thing to do early. And then I think I do want to get to the point where we can do some dynamic allocations in between VM runs. So that we can do different USB descriptors and different heap sizes and that stuff. So I kind of want to do that at some point as well. But I think for now it's probably just best to get to the point where we don't have all this code where that's commented out essentially.
Yeah, right. So I was just going to keep plowing through bus IO, but as I said, I can take this diversion to make sure that SPI DMA works, because that will enable the SPI flash, right?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would just do that. I think it's worth having the DMA going for that. And you could talk with Phil B, who is on GitHub as Paint Your Dragon. He's been poking at the DMA stuff as well. So if you have questions, he might have some insights there too.
Okay. All right.
And I meant to follow up with Sedacious about they were trying to do the PWM stuff, and I was going to offer to help with that as well. I think I'll probably just take a look at Analog IO and hammer that out, and then Pulse IO. And that'll get us pretty far, I think.
Right. And I think the bit bang IO is just going to work.
It should work already, yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly maybe the lowest level routines have to have the GPIO stuff done, but that's going to be really simple.
Well, it is done. It just uses digital IO.
Okay, yeah, it was just commented out or something.
Oh,
it's
was it?
Not actually compiled in right now, I think so.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, I should look at that.
I'm not sure. I might be wrong about that. So.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so in general, our focus will be you'll continue on the SPI stuff.
Yeah.
And then our focus will be getting all of the existing modules in 2x going before we introduce anything new.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, USB is usable now, right?
It does seem to be, yeah.
I've actually had it running for 4 or 5 days now, I think. This is the most stable at least the build I have has ever been.
Okay. All right, well, I won't circle back on USB quite yet then. I think we'll just let it soak. The only thing I'm tempted to do is turn off the cache control just to see if that's actually helping or not.
Okay.
Because I think what you checked in did have that, but I'd rather not. That's kind of a big stick in my mind.
Okay, yeah, and I mean I took the tip of your SPI, not SPI, of the USB align branch, and that's what's there currently.
Yep.
And then there's some other miscellaneous. So then things besides on the mainline stuff, we do need to somebody needs to go through all the libraries and build a new bundle with the read into spelled correctly, so that we have a consistent one, and we should start building 3.0. And the other thing is to fix the UF2 bootloader stuff so that the current stuff works for all the boards. Right now it doesn't. Your fork is only for ESF4. So, and I don't know what the deal you have with Microsoft about submitting pull requests and stuff.
I haven't talked to them about it.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, I haven't actually tested it on the M0s. That's why I didn't quite do it. I only tested the bootloader on the M4.
I think it doesn't even compile. So
for anything but the Metro M0, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I wasn't sure what state that was in. So I was going to change the size so that the flash erasers work, but you or I can do that. So whatever, if you feel like doing it, you go ahead. But
the flash eraser, because it overwrites each block.
What happens is the flash, if you give UF2 bootloader, if you give it a UF2 file that's out of range, then it doesn't actually erase the flash. I thought that it would just fail, but actually, maybe it does erase half the flash. I don't know. But what happens is it notices that it can't write into certain areas. And so then what happens is that it stops. And if you look in the file in the XXX boot file system, you'll see the name of the thing that you tried to upload as an additional file, which is kind of its way of saying like, this didn't work. Or it didn't work as well as you thought. So what's happening right now is that the flash eraser is only erasing the first half of the flash because it's set on the lowest. It's set on the 256K version of the SAMD51.
Right,
So
right.
the whole point of the flash eraser to reset the file system is not working. So that's why.
Okay, I'll take a look at the UF2 stuff today. It would be nice to put a bow on that and just be done with it.
Yeah, I think it would just be right. Or if you want, I can do that too. But if you want to do that, go ahead. So.
No, you just keep rocking Bus.io.
Okay. All right.
I know you've been. If you ever need a break from that, feel free to tag team it with me. I know you've been heads down on it.
Well, I can tell you on the side about how what I decided to do about the config ASF4 config files. So
why on the side?
Okay, I'll tell you now. So
the background.
Originally, yeah, we want to give the background. Yeah.
Yeah. So the background on this is that the way Atmel Start configures a lot of the devices. So basically, the way a microcontroller like the SAMDs work is you have like this core CPU that then can talk to a bunch of peripherals. And I've started to think of it very similar to just like if you have an I2C or a SPI device separate, where they actually work independently, so to speak. And so just like when you start up an I2C or a SPI device, you've got to set a bunch of registers to get it going. And the way that Atmel Start does that is it generates a bunch of defines that get used deep down in the code. You don't actually pass any of it in. And Dan and I were talking about a way to make that better.
Right. So the way it works right now is the way I worked when I first implemented it for I2C is that I defined all 6 or 8 SIRCOMs, which are the serial communication thingies that can do I2C or SPI or UART.
Mm-hmm.
I made them all. I defined them all, and then it makes up this configuration array that's static, but is in RAM, that is all the settings that you need, like all the register settings. So that makes it so that makes you, so you need one of those tables for each of the kinds of things that there are, one for all the I2C SIRCOMs, which is all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to elaborate on what you were saying, unlike most people who use microcontrollers, we do dynamic allocation of the SIRCOMs at runtime. And nobody else does that because you're not really interested in having the SIRCOMs in your toaster change from I2C to SPI or something like that. So what I did is I defined one SIRCOM for each thing, which is what you did originally. So there's one SPI, one I2C, one UART. And then that table now only has one set of settings in it. And I define that as the prototype SIRCOM for that thing. So SIRCOM 0, as defined in the table, is for SPI, and SIRCOM 1 is for I2C, and so forth. So it makes the tables 1/8 or 1/6 the size they were before. And then I just had to change one line in the driver code that instead of looking up the actual SIRCOM number based on which one you pass in, it always uses the prototype number. And that was really a change. And so I didn't have to change a whole bunch of stuff or write a whole bunch of new setting code or anything. So it's still really, it's efficient, and it's not using up that much space. So when we add more devices, like if we need to have different settings for I2C slaves or whatever the heck, or asynchronous SPI or something, then we'll just add more of those. Hopefully we won't run out. We won't have need more prototype devices than SIRCOMs, which I don't think we'll do.
Yeah, I doubt that too.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like good solution.
After I went around and it's like, oh, this is just the easy way to do it. And it's just like 3 or 4 lines of code changed. That's it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Good work, Dan.
All right. Thank you. But thank you for making me think about it. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's an important hurdle to get over, this idea that ASF4 is not perfect and you should use it when it's convenient and not when it's not.
Right.
Mike, do you want to talk about your process question? I'm not exactly.
Yeah. Yes. I was just confused about how tags are used in our system. I know taking a look at how the bundle is built, that there's special code in there to say, okay, get the latest tagged file and use that.
Right.
And all of the changes I've made in the last week, those don't have tags yet.
Right.
So they're not really included. In fact, I was taking a look at filing the bundle, starting with the Adafruit bundle and then just going down to libraries, and I'm seeing that some of my changes, like for ustruct and struct, are available in some of the libraries, but aren't in others. So it's kind of a mixed bag. So my question is, when do tags get assigned, and who assigns them to the individual files?
Right. So tags are used kind of internally by GitHub to mark releases. So tag you can think of kind of as a different name for release, is one way to think about it. So CircuitPython tags, I tend to tag manually from my own Git repo, so if I want to build it early, before I actually have like the release notes done and stuff. For drivers, typically what I'll do is I'll just put a new tag in GitHub and just put the release notes in directly. So for drivers, the tags end up being created by GitHub when you create a new release. The people who can do that are tend to be me and Dan. We might have a group. What I would say is, in terms of permissions, I'd be happy to give you permissions to just make releases. To do that.
Okay, well, so so basically they need to be assigned sometime, and by some person.
Correct.
And it makes, I was thinking, what I'm saying is that the one that didn't get assigned yet was LIS3DH, which is a pretty important one.
Yep.
That doesn't have the ustruct one. So let's just take that for an example. So should I then, if you give me the permission to do that, should I go in and then just basically create a tag for the next one in line? I don't even know what it would be.
So you go into new releases and say create new release.
Okay.
Pick a tag. If it's a minor thing like just the read into or ustruct, it's probably just a like last digit sort of thing, because from the outside it doesn't really matter. And then most of the drivers have kind of blurbs that go with the releases, so I usually just copy the previous blurb, change the notes about what changed, but then there's also some boilerplate about like, here's how you install it and all that. And then you just say submit or whatever the button says, and that will tag it, and that will show it as a new release.
Okay.
But just to be clear, you're creating the tag in GitHub, not in your local repo.
Correct.
And then it takes care of everything else. One thing I want to say is that there's a lot of inconsistency about which libraries are connected up to Travis and read the docs already. And so I've created a bunch of releases and then nothing happened.
Right.
Like the MPY files weren't created. So you have to make a pass through those and also make sure that Travis is set up for all of them. So
that would be a good beginner issue, is like writing a script that can just tell us which ones are set up, right?
Yeah.
Because you should be able to go to Travis and be like, oh, get me the status for the latest build of this repo. And if it's like, I don't know what you're talking about, then we know that we have to set it up.
You're going to need to figure out if Travis has an API, because the big problem that I think people miss is that once you create a repository and the instructions say like you need to go to Travis CI and set the GitHub token environment variable, which you have to generate this token from the GitHub kind of security and authentication APIs.
Right.
Anyways, if you forget to do that, then it doesn't work, because Travis has to be able to talk to GitHub to push a file onto a release, which requires authentication credentials like OAuth type stuff.
Right.
So anyways, long story short, you're going to have to do some machinations to talk to Travis and figure out, I don't even know if they have an API to look at their internal state, but you need to verify that GitHub token is there. And then also verify, like, on the GitHub repo, is there a .travis.yml and all that stuff. So it'd be pretty cool, but yeah, just there might be more complexity there than you expect.
Yeah, it's not super simple. But yeah, that would be good for consistency's sake.
Okay, well, I got my answer, I think.
Okay, cool. Is this something that breaks after cookie cutter? Yeah, it's some manual setup that you need after cookie cutter. All right, anything else people want to chat about? I don't think my guide does. I think, Tony, do you have a guide for the Travis stuff?
Yeah, the guide I have mentions what to do, so I'll put a link in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
Basically, you just need to edit the travis.yml, and then it has all these comments at the top that describe exactly what you need to do.
Okay, yeah, and we should put I'll modify my guide to link to that as well.
Does it mention that you have to do the on-off switch thing inside Travis to enable the repo?
Yeah, yep. There's a little switch you flip.
Yeah. There's like 3 things you have to do. Yeah. So
and I try to be super clear in it, so if it's not easy to follow or something, let me know. And
okay. Yeah, I'll point to that as well from the sharing guide that I have.
But I'd like to thank Tony. Like I had exactly the trouble, and then
it's annoying. I mean,
it's really like, oh, I forgot to do that. Right.
I hate how there's no feedback, and I hate how indirect the system is, and that it's like, you have to trigger a release, and then indirectly Travis will detect this, and then it will go and build things, and all of this stuff is happening as a side effect of the release. And I hate side effect stuff. I love when things are explicit, and it's like I run this command, this thing runs, and it either fails or succeeds. And so I feel your pain on that. And so yeah, when folks are dealing with it, it's annoying, but I mean, it's nice, and then it's all just Travis doing it on their side. So it's there's no resources or anything that we worry about. But yeah, there's some pain that comes with it.
Yeah.
We'll get it better. It's still early days.
Yeah.
We're learning all this.
It's a success disaster. We have so many libraries. So
those are problems I'm okay having.
That's right.
All right. Anything else? No. All right. Well, thank you all. Next Monday works for me. Dan, is it work for you?
Good. Yeah.
Okay. So let's plan on doing. Tony, are you around Monday as well?
What is it? Thanksgiving?
Yeah. It's Thanksgiving's the other half of the week.
Oh right. Yeah. No, I'll be fine Monday. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So we'll do Monday next week. And I will post a reminder just like I did last night. So thank you all. I'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.